Okay, so welcome to the week 2 go-to session. This is the second go-to session of 4 for the month. We do have a lot to get through tonight. Mostly, I will talk about the essay that's due this Sunday, but we'll actually begin by talking about research and APA formatting. Just out of curiosity, we only have 7 people in the room, but is there anybody here who's had familiarity with APA style formatting in the past? Usually it's pretty new to Full Sail students, or I should say most students in general. In high school, you typically are introduced to MLA style. So I'm just curious if there's anybody who has passing familiarity with APA, because we will spend some time talking about that tonight. Okay, Patrick says he's not sure. It's okay if you don't, because I'm going to go over the nuts and bolts of it tonight. Because this is the style system you'll need to use throughout your time at Full Sail. So English is really the first class you get it in depth. You hear it referred to sometimes in previous classes, such as DGL. But English is where you get it really in detail. Okay, so let's start talking about what we need to talk about for tonight. Oops. Okay, so here's an overview of what we're going to go over. I'm actually going to get to this first item later, even though it appears first, the appeal for action essay, the assignment that's due on Sunday, including the reminder of essay writing, what we're trying to do in terms of putting an essay together. I'm actually going to skip down and begin with these topics here, research and APA style. Not because they're the most important features, but you do get a significant amount of points awarded for this stuff if you haven't looked at the grading rubric for the essay assignment that's due on Sunday. By the way, the essay is a 2 to 4 page paper. That's not including the cover page or the references page. So the bulk of the essay needs to be at least 2 to 4 pages. That's not terribly long. Sometimes students think that it is, but 2 to 4 pages is actually pretty short. I've written 25 page papers in the past. Yes, Arthur, that's double spaced. So, it's not that long. Figure that there's usually 250 to 300 words per page, per type page. So double that amount, and you should come close to 2 pages. But 30 points, so 30% of your grade goes to research and APA. I kind of divide it in half. Half of those points go toward what sort of research you did and whether it was quality research or not. And another half, or 15 points, sort of goes to APA style. Are you following the principles of APA? So I'm going to spend the first part of the session talking about these issues. Okay, just some reminders. If you haven't already, check your feedback on the week 1 go-to quiz. Most importantly, you guys proposed your topics and I gave you feedback on it. I know I can seem picky. I know I can push people. I know I can seem badgering. But there's good reason for this. I just sort of know, after having taught this assignment for a long time, nearly a year now, what sorts of topics lead toward a good path in terms of the essay and the final actual public service announcement, and which ones tend to lead to trouble. So if you haven't already, refine your topic and get back in touch with me regarding what you're considering now, because this topic will become the foundation for everything you'll do for the rest of the month. That's why it's important to sort of get on the right path early. Let me mention something real quickly. It's not on the slide here. I entered, what am I thinking? McGraw-Hill, Learn Smart Achieve grades, right, for the week 1 module. A lot of people did it, but surprisingly, a lot of people didn't, which is shocking because I usually shout so loud during week 1 to please, please, please take advantage of those free points, that if you just do those interactive modules over at McGraw-Hill Connect, you get full credit for it, right? So I don't grade it in terms of correctness. You just complete the thing and you get full credit. I was a little bit surprised to see that there was probably about a third of people who either didn't do it at all or barely did it. And that's just, you're leaving easy points on the table. So it's not too late to turn things around. There's a week 2 LSA module to complete. There's a week 3 module to complete. And there's that month-long one as well. So please take advantage of those free points. Okay, so let's talk about research. I'm going to take a quick sip of my drink. Yeah, it's important to talk about research, okay? And to me, research means, and you might want to pay attention to this slide because it could show up in a go-to quiz question. To me, research means joining a discussion or participating in a conversation, Okay, so either of those work. Research is like joining a discussion or participating in a conversation. And by that, I mean, imagine that you're attending a dinner party. Okay, so it's a dinner party. It's not like a keg party. It's not a crazy wild party, but a somewhat adult party where perhaps people are in groups talking about serious things. For example, it's election night, so maybe people are talking about politics, or maybe they're talking about something else. Chances are you're probably not going to jump right into that conversation if you're not comfortable doing so. You'll probably kind of wait. You'll listen. You'll eavesdrop. You'll wait to hear what other people said, and then when you feel comfortable, you'll jump in. Ideally, this is the way that research works. Okay, instead of literally listening to a conversation and eavesdropping, you'll be doing the same thing, except it's going to take the form of reading what other people have said. Okay, the conversation occurs on the page in the form of the written word. All of you have chosen topics that other people have already written about. So if you're writing about, I don't know, streaming music companies and the royalty rates they pay out to artists, or if you're writing about hearing damage caused by listening to music at very loud volumes for a long time, or any number of the topics that I've read about that you guys have pitched. Other people have written about these topics. So the more that you sort of quietly listen to that conversation before you join in, the better you'll be able to participate in that conversation. So that's what research ideally is about. I say this because sometimes people see the word research and think, oh, I just need to go find a quotation somewhere and throw it in my essay. That's not research. I understand that people are busy. I understand that our students have families. They have full-time jobs. They have other responsibilities. They don't have necessarily every second of the day to devote to these assignments and projects. But ideally, you should be finding some time to do quality research, not just running to find something to throw into your paper. For your essay, you need at least one source. That's a minimum. I encourage more. So I encourage you to have a second, third, fourth source. But the minimum requirement is one, and that one needs to come from the Full Sail library databases. Okay? Additional sources can come from the databases as well, or they can come from credible online sources. And if you think back to the course you took in DGL, you should have already been introduced to this idea of credible versus not so credible sources. So, for example, someone's blog is not a credible source. Wikipedia is not a credible source. Websites that you're not sure who created it or what the person's background is are not credible sources. That said, Google can lead to lots of great things, right? Like a New York Times article. We don't think of CNN or USA Today as being super high quality, but still, they're credible sources. So those kinds of sources we can trust. And you're welcome to sort of search out and find those sorts of things as your additional sources. But at least one needs to come from the Full Sail library databases. Okay, so keep that in mind. Research ideally is like joining in on a discussion that's already been occurring before you entered the room. Actually, let me get away from this for just a second. I'll come back to APA style, and I want to show you the Full Sail library databases. Okay, so most of you should know how to get to the Full Sail library, right? I'm just going to type in Full Sail Connect into Google. And it's always this org sync result that comes up. If you haven't already, you should probably bookmark it. I should probably bookmark it so I don't always have to search for it. But again, from DGL, you should kind of remember how to do this. So I'm going to click on the 10 million things that asked me so I can get in. And boom, we're in. You can browse for the library through browse organizations, but it's much easier to scroll down and you'll see library. Right, and if we scroll down again, we'll see this little guy here, research databases. And you have a bunch of online databases, okay? Everything from academic search complete to business source complete, which is business related. Here's another database on just communication and mass media, etc. If you're into video games, there's even a website. It's a separate website, but it's listed as one of the Full Sail research databases, so it counts as one. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Gamasutra. Okay, so here's a video game site where you can look for specific articles. Most people will probably start somewhere up here with the very first one, Academic Search Complete, just because it's kind of the most comprehensive and will return the most results. That said, don't rule out the others. I've had students find great things in Business Source Complete that they didn't find up here, or in Communication and Mass Media. But let's go to Academic Search Complete. And things are running slow. Okay, so you have these different search boxes up here, right? You can fill in up to 3 boxes. My recommendation is to try to use a variety of keywords related to your topic. Some of you have easy topics that will immediately produce results. Others of you might have to spend more time, like the example topic that I posted to the discussion board about video games and representations of women. Like, that's a really easy topic. So if I just type in video games, women, representation. Did I spell that right? Representation. No. Has that ever happened to you, where you can't tell if you misspelled it or not? Okay. So we get our results, okay? 33 of them. The first one seems interesting. Selling gender associations of box art representation of female characters. Okay, that's not literally about video games, but maybe there's something about box art that I can find useful. The problem here is the article isn't truly available. Okay? We need a PDF or HTML file down here in order to get the full article. All we have for this one is an abstract. And that's one of the frustrating things about the Full Sail Library database. You might stumble across an article that seems awesome, and then you find out it's not truly available. You can try to Google it to see if it's available in full text form that way. But it's better just to go to the left and click on full text so that you limit yourself to results of things that are truly just available. And you can see it filters down to 16 results, so a lot fewer. And look, the very first one, big breasts and bad guys, depictions of gender and race in video games. Well, that sounds pretty good. Okay? It's a little bit older, it's from 2008, but it's not so old that I would automatically rule it out. I mean, it's still somewhat contemporary enough that it might have useful stuff in it. And I can look through the rest of the results as well. But I'm going to go with this first one. Okay, so if I click on the PDF file, it brings up the article. And it's taking a long time because my computer is running hot. It's got too many things open. It's taking so long that I'm actually going to get away from it. Although I do want to come back to this later because I want to show some tricks about how to cite things and how the Full Sail Library database can actually help you with that. But whatever your topic is, like let's say streaming music. Oops, can't spell. Streaming music. Royalties, right? Because that's the issue with streaming music typically, the royalties they pay out to artists. I'll leave the last field blank and I'll do a search. I'll limit it to full text. And look, okay, streaming royalties, the tip of the iceberg from 2013. This article presents the author's views on how licensing operates for music streaming sites. Okay, so that sounds pretty interesting. Or the payout, how iTunes royalty rates work. Okay, that looks pretty good. Or the bottom line from Billboard. This article examines royalties, controversy surrounding it. Okay, that sounds pretty good. So some topics are just awesome, right? The video game and women works awesome. Streaming music and royalties produces tons of results. If you have a more subtle topic, or maybe you're in one of those areas like show production, you're going to have to play around with the search terms a lot. Okay, it won't yield results as easily as I've just done. So don't get frustrated if you get something in. If you don't get something in 2 seconds like I've done, it might take you 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. And the secret is really to play around with these search words as much as possible and to think outside of the box. So if like the keywords from your topic aren't really producing results, you'll have to be more creative. I wish I could give an example off the top of my head, but I can't think of one. But oh gosh, and one came up in the campus class that I taught today where a student was being really unique in the way he was looking for keywords. I think he was dealing with how difficult it is for music artists to get noticed, and he wasn't getting good results. So he put in In one search box, self-promotion, and in another box, anger. I don't know what he was thinking, but he actually got a good result by thinking that way, just because in his mind, the idea that maybe artists feel frustrated and they have this need to self-promote, whereas in the old days they would have to sign record labels. I mean, 9 times out of 10 that wouldn't yield good results, but it did for him. So you'll have to be really creative with whatever search words you use. Try lots of different words, lots of different expressions. Another trick is to look specifically for the results that you want. So for example, let's say I wasn't getting good results for my video game topic, but in my mind I already know in my paper I want to make the case that women are playing video games more than ever, and that's why video game companies should be more responsible. I might do a specific search for example, numbers of women who play video games, or percentage of women who play video games, or something like that. So you can also specifically look for the kind of results you expect to find. I call that reverse engineering. Another reverse engineering trick is to actually begin with your internet searches. Because if you begin with your sort of Googling, maybe you'll get a clearer sense of your topic, so you can come back to the databases and look for things more specifically because you understand the topic better. And I'm going to show just real quickly, like if I go to Google and type in something like video games, gender, representation, look, the very first very first entry is something from Wikipedia. Does Wikipedia have any use? I'm asking this to the people present, by the way. I mean, we know that Wikipedia, you hear that it's bad, it's terrible, it should never be used as a source. Does Wikipedia have any benefit at all? Can anybody think of any reason why we might ever go to Wikipedia? Or have you just been told never to go to it? And Patrick says it can be used as a starting place. Scott mentions a very important point, the references at the bottom. Marcelo says the same thing. Yes. Because have you read bad Wikipedia entries? Like, do you know? I mean, it depends on your knowledge level of the topic, but have you seen awful Wikipedia pages? Because I have. I mean, and you can kind of tell, right? Sometimes just by the way that they're written, sometimes just based on how little information there is. But this one is actually, it looks pretty good. Like, I'm not a super expert on this category, but it's pretty well written. It's pretty in depth. I would never quote from it. I would never cite from it. I would never trust it as a source. But yes, if I go down to the bottom, look, I've got 57 different references. I might look at those to see if there's something interesting there. So Wikipedia can be a great place to start. It's just not a place to quote from or cite. If I go back to my general Google search, I get lots of other good things. Like, here's one, tropes versus women in video games, why it matters, IGN. By the way, for like video game topics, IGN counts as a credible source, right? It's an online publication. IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, those are credible sources. There are music equivalents as well, places like Billboard. Turn that off. I haven't read this through, but it's written by Paul Dean, not Paula Dean, but Paul Dean, and I would have to read it to see if there's anything useful, but okay, it looks like it's a fairly in-depth article, right? It's not just a blurb, it's not a one-paragraph thingy that someone's trying to pass off as research, like it's an actual article. So if I read this and liked it, okay, maybe I could use that. So understand that you have two options there, okay? One source needs to come from the Full Sail library databases, but a second, third, fourth source can come from online. Okay, so let's go back to my PowerPoint presentation, because now I want to turn the focus to APA format. Okay, so APA style, right? So we're talking about style, not like the style of this woman in this photo, who has awesome style, by the way. But we're talking about style systems that people use to give credit and cite the research that they use in a paper. And at Full Sail, not just in this class, but in all of your classes, we use APA style, okay? Most of you probably, if you're familiar with the style system at all, you're probably more familiar with MLA, because that's pretty standard in high schools, especially in English courses. APA style, it's completely different in terms of the specific rules and the nitpicky details, but it's the same in terms of theory. I mean, all the style systems are basically similar in terms of you have to cite things both in text and at the end of the paper. So let's start with in-text citations, okay? Oh, let me back up just a bit. If we give a brief overview of APA, we're basically talking about three things. First, issues of layout and format. So that means like paragraphing, font size, page numbers, a header. And it refers to two issues that are within the text of the paper itself. In-text citations, so that means within the body of the essay, you have to stop, call a timeout whenever you either quote something directly or whenever you present research, even if it's written in your own words, but it came from somewhere else. Okay, we need to cite it right there and then. And then when the paper's over, there's a separate page called the references page, where we list the stuff that we cited within the essay in fuller detail. Okay, so let's start with in-text citations. And then if you'll bear with me, we're going to actually try to do something together. So I'll just sort of shout out right now that if you have Microsoft Word installed on your computer, you might want to open a blank document and have it ready, because I'll actually walk you through the steps of what you need to do to set up your paper in terms of layout and format, so you don't lose any points on that end. But let's talk about in-text citations. Okay, let me move my control panel out of the way so people can see the slide. Any quotation, fact, or information that comes from research must be cited. Okay, so it's not just quotations. Sometimes students make that mistake. They think, oh, if I'm quoting something directly, I have to cite it. But if I'm not, I don't. No, anything that comes from research needs to be cited, whether it's in your own words or whether you're quoting it. The only tiny exception is purely factual information. Okay, like if you don't know that the American Civil War occurred between 1861 and 1865 and you needed to look that up, you would never have to cite that. Okay, because that's just a fact. It's not attributable to anybody's hard work or creativity or research. It's just a fact. But everything else that comes from research needs to be cited. And there are basically two ways to handle this, okay? And I encourage you to pick one strategy or the other. The first strategy is to come up with a signal phrase where you include the author's last name, or you can put the full name if you want. Typically the convention is last name. But you put the author's name and the year of publication in parentheses. So that's what I've done here. According to Smith, 2008. Then you present your quotation. And then in parentheses at the very end, you put a page or a paragraph number. Okay, so there's one option. Author's name, year of publication, and a signal phrase, and then page and paragraph number at the very end. Or you can save everything for the end. Okay, and just find a natural way to present your quotation, right? So a recent study states, blah, blah, blah. That's my quotation. And then in parentheses, separated by commas, you put the author's last name, year, and page or paragraph number. So it's the same information that's up here. It's just all saved for the end and put in parentheses. Why do I say page or paragraph number? It's not a matter of flipping a coin. You don't decide, oh, I'm going to put a page number or a paragraph number. Most of the time, you'll be putting a page number. Paragraph numbers exist for example, that IGN article I just showed that I found through a Google search, right? That video game article that's on IGN.com. That article has no page numbers. So the only way a reader could figure out where the quotation comes from is if the author, the writer, you, actually specifies which paragraph that quotation appears in. So for the most part, you'll probably be putting page numbers. If it comes from an online source, you might be putting a paragraph number. And the exact same rule applies to if you're sharing information that came from research, but you're not quoting it, okay? So it's entirely in your own words. It has no similarity to the original. By the way, that's another point I want to share. If you're paraphrasing or putting things in your own words, it should have zero similarity to the original. Like not even 2 or 3 words should match the original. But if you're doing a good job of that, of paraphrasing, the same rules apply. You can create a signal phrase with the author's name and publication year in parentheses, and then put a page number or paragraph number at the end, or you can save everything for the end. It might seem complicated or confusing, but it's actually pretty simple. If you can just keep these things in mind, the pattern, you'll be fine with in-text citations. Okay, so while we're talking about quotations, I have a couple tips to share. These might appear in a quiz. Mark says, is there an APA tools and FSO? I'm not sure what you mean by APA tools. You have a couple of APA assets, that's true. There's a link to apaproject.info, which I'll show in just a second. That's a website that was created by a fellow English instructor in the Full Sail English department, which you can use. I've also uploaded a PowerPoint presentation called APA Basics. I'm also going to show that in just a second. So you do have these tools that provide even more information. But while we're talking about quotations or research in general, some quick tips. First of all, and these might be quiz questions, do not photobomb your quotations, facts, or statistics. What do I mean by photobomb? I have to explain this because we sometimes do have some international students who might not be familiar with that expression, right? Photobombing is when someone either on accident or intentionally gets in a picture that you're trying to take, right? We call that photobombing, when someone just surprises by appearing in the middle of your photo, even though you didn't want them to. That's my attempt to be sort of modern and hip and make a social media reference. But yeah, when a quotation appears out of nowhere, like I'm just reading along in your paper and it's going well, and then boom, a quotation appears. That's like photobombing. That's the photobombing equivalent of what quotations feel like when they appear out of nowhere in a paper. So we have to set up quotations in research. Okay, we don't just drop them in there. I recommend using the sandwich technique. So we set up the quotation, which is like one piece of the bread. We deliver the quotation, which is like the meat. Or if you're a vegetarian, it's like the vegetables or cheese. And we follow up the quotation with commentary, which is like the other piece of bread. Okay, so we're not just dropping quotations out of nowhere. Quotations should also logically speak to whatever you were discussing before the quotation appeared. And yeah, you should follow it up with some commentary. Also, avoid long quotations that speak entirely for you. Sometimes students find these awesome quotes, right? They're super long. And I'm not saying that they're doing anything devious or malicious. They just see this passage and think, wow, this author explains things better than I ever could. And they just take the quote of the long quotation and stick it into their paper. That's not what we're trying to do here. Occasional use of research should help support your own points, okay? Not the other way around. Okay, so we're using research to help us. We're not sort of using research primarily and then decorating it with our own words. Plus, quotations over 40 words need to be placed in a special format called block format. It's not terribly difficult, but it is an extra step that you'll have to learn. So for the most part, you probably won't need quotations that long. Okay, so be careful about that. Just dropping in things that are speaking for you. Okay, so let me get away from this. And if you have a blank Microsoft Word document open, I encourage you to follow along. If not, you can watch this after the fact, but it might be easier if you can to do it right now in real time. Because if you do it right now, you'll have your APA style paper set up in terms of format and layout, so you don't have to touch it again. So you can just hit the ground running when it comes to essay time. Plus, there are a lot of steps involved. They're not difficult, but they are numerous. So if you follow along, you can kind of play along with me. Okay, we'll take a look at this later. I'm going to open up a brand new Microsoft Word document. Okay, so if you have a blank document, I'm going to give people about 5 seconds to open one if they don't have one, and I'm going to take a sip from my coffee. I'm using the Mac version of Microsoft Word. If you're using a PC version, maybe some of the things that I point out are in different places, so you'll just have to find it. If you don't have Microsoft Word, that's fine. If you're using Pages or you're using an online tool like Google Docs, or, there are lots of, or OpenOffice.org or something like that, that's fine as well. But again, you'll just have to find where these specific functions are, because I'm using this version of Word. Here, let me blow this up a little bit bigger. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is go to Layout. And you'll see there are margins, top, bottom, left, right. These all need to be set to 1. Okay, so set it to 1. And you may not notice, but the ruler down here is actually making changes as I enter these figures. So things are happening, even though it doesn't seem like they are. Okay, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Great, okay, we got our margin set. The next thing we have to do is create our header. In my version of Word, it's very simple. You just go to the top inch of the page, double click, and we're in the header. It used to be really complicated in the old days. You had to go up to the menu, choose the header, enter in information. Now you just double click. Very, very easy. With the header open, if you click on the header and footer tab, this step isn't super important, but I'm going to show it anyway. If you're in the header and footer tab, just click on this little guy here called different first page. This just makes it so that our header on page 1 is going to be different than the header on page 2, 3, and 4, because technically it's supposed to be different. By the way, I just expect about 90% correctness in terms of APA, so if the header isn't different on page 1 versus page 2, I'm not really going to take off points from that, but I am going to show the right way to do it. Okay, so the first thing we do is we type the words running head, colon, and then in all caps, we put our essay title. I'm just going to make up a generic title. I'm going to call it placeholder English paper for November. Okay, that's the title of my paper. The final thing we need to do is insert a page number. I recommend for this one doing it old school and actually going to the top, because if you just click page number, it's going to put the page number in a weird spot. But if you go up to insert page numbers, it's already set up for where you want it in the top right corner. We do want the number to appear on the first page, so I'm going to click that box and click OK. This always happens. Every month this happens. It disappears. I don't know why. Oh no, it's there. Phew. I'm telling you, in past months it wouldn't just reappear like that. I had to type it in over again. Okay, so we're set. Okay, we got our running head, our page number. I'm going to close this. The next thing we need to do is go down. I'm hitting enter a bunch of times, by the way, to about the center of the page. And we need to type 3 things, which is the title of the paper. Again, our name. Well, actually, hold on. Let me double check. By the way, this is a good thing to see. Okay, APA rules are numerous. I don't have them memorized off the top of my head all the time. I have to double check things, okay? So it's normal if you have to double check. Oh, I got too many things open. It's going to take forever for this to load. Okay, here it comes. Yeah, title, name, university. Okay, so let me go back to my... So I'll put the title of my paper, which I call, and by the way, it's not in all caps now, placeholder English paper for November. I'm going to put my name, university. This needs to be double spaced, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to highlight everything. In my version of Word, it's this funny up and down arrow thing that's the spacing indicator, so I'm going to change it to 2.0. I'm also going to center it by clicking on this little guy here. And I'm going to reduce the size just to, you just have to do it by eyesight. That's a little bit too small. Okay, you want it in the center, so that looks a little bit too high, so I'm just going to bump it down. Okay, that looks good. I don't know if that's perfectly centered, but again, just to eyeball it, okay? And boom, that's your cover page, okay? We're almost done. Now I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to get to the very first line of the second page. And here I'm going to double click at the top of the page again to get back into my header. Get back. Why is that working? Hold on. Time out. Okay, that looks good. I don't know if this is because everything's running hot in my system. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to see if this works. I'm going to get this off. Oh, now everything disappeared. Let me see if I can copy this. By the way, this is the fun you'll get to deal with as well. Okay, get my page number back. Now let's see if that header will appear. Okay, it's appearing on page 2 now. I'm going to leave it this way. If you want to leave it to, like I said, I'm not going to take off points for it, okay? I think my machine is running hot. I should be able to click on the header on page 2 and make it different than the first page. But you know what? I'm not going to waste your time with that. Okay, so we're on page 2. At the very first line, okay? So we don't bump down 10 million times. We're on the very first line of that second page. We put our title again. By the way, you'll come up with your own title. I don't want to see anybody's paper called Placeholder English Paper for November. We hit enter just once. Okay, not 10 times. We move things to the left, and we can just start typing away. Okay, I'll hit tab to indent, and my paper goes right here. Okay, and I can just keep going. This might seem like common sense to some people, but when you get to the end of a paragraph, like I'm going to pretend right now my paragraph comes to an end, we hit enter once, hit indent, right tab, and just keep going. We don't hit enter like 3 times. We don't create extra space. I know to some people it looks weird, but to me it's the exact opposite. As an instructor, it looks weird when you do like this. Okay, when you read a Harry Potter novel, you don't see 10 spaces between paragraphs. Okay, so you just hit enter once and keep on going. When you reach the end of your paper, okay, so let's pretend my paper is over. The references page goes on its brand new page. And again, it's the very first line of the very last page. We type the word references. We center it. Notice references, the word is in the same font size and style as everything else in the document. Okay, it's not in a different font. It's not in all caps. It's not bolded. It's not underlined. Okay, part of professionalism is a uniform-looking document where everything is kind of in the same style. And this is where we can start putting our references. Now, how do we start putting together the references page? Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint thingy. The references page. Why do I have a big sorry sign up here? The reason I have a big sorry sign is because I don't have enough time in this session or this week or this month to walk you through all the specifics that you might encounter when it comes to the references page. But what I can do is point you to some different sources and show you a couple different tricks. So first of all, let me show you some tricks. When you're in the Full Sail Library databases, okay, so let me go back there. Right, streaming royalties, the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to click on this. I'll click on the HTML because it should load faster. Once we're in the article, you have this little tool on the right here called Cite. Okay, you can use it with one warning. You have to fix all the small errors that the citation generator makes. But I have no problem with you starting here. So if I click on Cite, you can see, look, I get the APA format. Now here's the thing, the citation generator loves to make little mistakes. Sometimes it puts the author's name in all caps. That's not correct. Sometimes it puts an article title in all caps. That's not correct. Sometimes it follows MLA rules for capitalization, where keywords get initial capitalization, but smaller words like the or of don't. That's not correct. APA style formatting for article titles follows the same capitalization rules as normal sentences. So sure, I could take this reference, but I need to fix it. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring it over to my references page. I'm going to make sure that the font size and style is the same as the rest of the document. And I'm going to fix all this stuff, right? So, oops. Streaming royalties. The tip of the iceberg. Okay. Article journals do get italicized, so I'm going to fix that. So I fixed the capitalization problems in the article title. Okay. There's one more thing that I need to do, which is put the words retrieved from. Oops. And if I go back to the database, you'll see this little chain link looking symbol. It's the permalink. That's what I need, the permalink. So here's the permalink. I'm going to copy that, put it in here. Now the last thing we need to do is the entries on the reference page, which are double spaced, by the way, just like the rest of the document. They follow the opposite rules for indentation. For example, paragraphs, first sentence is indented, other lines are not. For your references pages entries, it's exact opposite. The first line is not indented, but other lines are. So I'm going to fix that. Okay, boom. I want to show something else very, very quickly. I'm going to try to find that article that I found before. So video games, oops, I can't type. Video games, women, representation. Right, I'm looking for that big breasted bad guys article. Because I want to show you something unique about this. With this article, if I click on the cite icon, here's the APA reference. And let me see if I can make it bigger. It has a DOI number, which stands for, I believe, Digital Object Identifier. It's just a fancy word for, it's sort of like a new way to sort of catalog online materials in a database. But this replaces the need for a permalink. So if ever you look and you find an article in the databases and it has this DOI number, you're good. You're good to go. All I need to do is fix the problems with capitalization here, and this one is perfect. So I'm going to copy this over, paste it in, keep it the same text style as everything else. Okay, and again, I need to fix all this stuff, right? So bear with me. Big breasts and bad guys, depictions of gender and race in video games. Select a race. I'm going to fix the indentation things. All right. So boom. So your references page is going to look something like this. Okay. A website kind of follows the exact same rules. You'll have an article. You'll often have an author's name, so last name of the author followed by first initial. You'll probably have a year of publication. You'll have a title for that article, like for that IGN article. It was, what was it, like tropes versus something? Okay, so there'll be an article. There'll be a publication title or a website name. So you'll have a lot of the same information. And instead of putting a retrieve from and then including the permalink, you'll just include the URL for that source. Okay. I'm going to close a bunch of, well, I don't know. Maybe I should keep this open. My machine is on fire. Ever since I uploaded the Mavericks, this thing is, I could fry eggs on this machine. Okay, well, I'm sorry. What did I want to show you? Oh, I know. Okay, so the sources you can use. So you have this thing, Project APA Info. It's listed as one of your assets. Okay, I forget where it's listed. Maybe in the week 2 overview, but it's listed somewhere. Projectapa.info. Okay, so here you can get really down-to-earth advice about in-text citations, the references page. You saw me click on the example of what the paper should look like in terms of layout and format, and you notice that I had to double-check things using this website. So it's a good website to use. Again, it was created by a fellow instructor, and she really sort of reduced it to the basics that most Full Sail students would need, so it's not this overwhelming APA thing. The other thing that I'm going to point out is that you have as one of your assets this PowerPoint presentation called APA Basics. It's about 50 slides long. I'm not going to go over through all 50 slides now because that would just bore you to tears. But I do encourage you, okay? I strongly encourage you, take the 30 minutes that it might take you to go through these 50 slides. Because if you do, you will have 0 questions about APA. I've covered the basics, the really, really essential stuff, but the sort of more specialty questions that you might have, they're covered in this presentation. So for example, you get some background, so if you're curious to know what APA means or what it aims to do, you can read that. But as we get deeper into the presentation, you'll see it covers like the same information I did, right? What an in-text citation looks like, the different ways to handle it. But it also handles unique situations like, what do you do if your article has no author? Well, you just use the first 3 words of the article, put in quotation marks. What if there's no publication date? You just use the expression ND, okay? In lowercase, separated by periods. What if it's a 1-page article or something that comes from the web? We cite a paragraph number, not a page number. Okay? As you go through it, again, the same things I covered. You can save everything for the end, author, year, page number, or you can indicate it in a signal phrase. And same thing for in-text citations. If there's no date for the article that you're citing, then just put ND in parentheses. Okay? And I'm just going to click through this, but it gets into how to handle the references page, including what do you do. Again, if there's no author, we just begin with the article title to begin with, followed by a date. There's no date. Again, use the expression ND. Okay, so this presentation contains like the answers to all of your questions and more. So please use it. Because again, 30 points of your grade goes to APA in research. And again, I'm looking for about 90% accuracy on APA format, and that means everything from the cover page to the references page to the handling of in-text citations, all that stuff. I just want you to get most of it right with a great deal of accuracy. And if you kind of follow through what I've gone through in this session, and if you use those tools and assets, you should be okay. Oh, I always try to race through that because APA is it's a lot to get through. It's not the most interesting material to get through as students, and yet it's super important. And one of the things I'm happiest about is students really finish this class with a pretty strong knowledge of how APA works, and it's tremendously easy. It's really just about following a specific rule, following a specific model that's available to you in lots of different places. Okay, so let's talk about the essay itself, which is due this Sunday. Again, it's a 2 to 4 page paper. I'm not going to open the actual assignment sheet because I'm worried that if I keep opening more things, my computer is going to hate me. But it's a 2 to 4 page paper. Okay. So last time we talked about the introduction and the thesis, which a lot of you have already posted to the discussion board. So hopefully you've got that part down. But there are other parts of the essay, of course, even though you might have the first paragraph written. There's no one way to write a paper, okay? I can't really give you a formula. I can tell you that most papers probably follow a format that's something like this, and you can play with this format as you see fit. So you've already done this first bullet, right? You've created an introduction. Hopefully you started your essay with some sort of opening move, you briefly define the issue, and then you delivered your thesis, which for this class is a specific message on your chosen issue that encourages a specific audience to do something about that issue. Okay? So if your introduction passes the test, you've already done this first bullet point. Next, you'll further define the issue using separate paragraphs to make separate points. I don't know if this is going to take you 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs. Whatever you think is best for the person to completely understand the issue that you're writing about. Follow the principles that you probably learned about in high school. So 1 topic or 1 issue per paragraph. So if there are 3 separate points you want to make about streaming music companies and their issue with the royalties that they pay out to artists, if you have 3 separate points you want to make, you'll probably need 3 separate paragraphs. Okay. Make sure you do discuss your call to action or your solution before the conclusion. Sometimes students forget about this. They do an awesome job introducing the paper. They do a pretty good job defining the issue, but then they just sort of quit when it comes to actually explaining and defining what it is they want a specific audience to do. They either skip it entirely or they just write 1 sentence, right? So if it's streaming music companies, they'll say, streaming music companies need to pay more, and that's it. Okay? Make sure that you do spend some time with this area here. And then finally, you'll need some sort of conclusion paragraph that brings the essay to a satisfying close. Okay, so it's really basic fundamentals, right? Introduction, body, conclusion. It's just you have some control over how many paragraphs and what you want to cover within the body of the paper. Okay, who's ready for quiz time? They all come at the end of the session this time. Quiz question number 1. Engaging in research is like participating in a what? Or I think in the original slide I said engaging in research is like joining a what? Either way is fine. Okay. Remember I said research is not just running to find a single quotation to throw in your paper? By the way, I should mention that I do check your sources pretty carefully. So I'm not trying to be a mean instructor, but I really do check to make sure that your sources are credible. So don't pull a quote from like a quotation site, like a site that's just a listing of blurbs and quotations. Don't quote from a website that's like a single paragraph and isn't a true source. But anyway, that's kind of the spirit of this question, that real research is not doing those sorts of things, that engaging in research is like participating in a blank. Okay, quiz question number 2. Let me move my control panel. Dropping in a quotation out of nowhere is similar to what social media or Instagram annoyance. Okay, I compare dropping quotations in out of nowhere to something very, very specific. Okay, a specific term from social media lingo. What is that? Okay, questions 3 and 4. This is kind of similar to last time, where they're not really so much quizzes, they're just things you have to do. Quiz question number 3. I want you to go to the Full Sail Library database. Find an article. I don't just mean find any article, because every so often, I don't know. I think it's pretty clear from the spirit of the session that you're supposed to find an article related to your topic, but every so often someone will find an article on, I don't know, the war in Iraq and just cite that. No. You need to find an article related to your topic. Okay? Once you find it, name the title, the author, and the publication. Briefly summarize the article's main focus. Okay, I don't need paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, but I do want a couple sentences that tell me the gist of what the article is about. Okay, so I want you to get moving on this right now. And this is proof that you're moving on it. So find a quality source through the Full Sail Library database and answer this information. Patrick, are those 2 questions? I don't know. Quiz question number 3, I don't think it's really so much 2 questions. I mean, it's one big task. Find an article, name the title, article, publication, and summarize it. In some ways, it's kind of like 4 questions, or 4 mini things that you need to do to answer it. And finally, question number 4. Once you find that article, show me that you can create a full end-of-the-paper reference article for that. And let me just show what I'm talking about, because every so often I get people doing, they get confused, and I understand, it gets confusing, but they'll give an in-text citation, or, I don't know, they'll reproduce the entire work cited for that article, or, no, I'm just asking you to do this. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Right? When I created these entries for the references page, remember those articles that I found? I want you to do that with the article that you found. Okay, that's what the question is. For that article you found, give me a full end of the paper references page. And follow all those rules. Okay, I covered a lot of stuff. If it has a DOI number, you're good to go. If it doesn't, you need to have the words retrieved from followed by the permalink. You need to fix issues with capitalization if there are errors made in either the author's name or the article name. I have no idea why I'm giving you this so much information, because it's basically telling you what to do for the quiz question, but get it right, okay? Questions? Preguntas? Anything that I didn't go over? I know we covered a lot tonight, and I know that this is the session that's probably the toughest to get through, because it's a lot about research, it's a lot about APA, but I do think there's a lot of solid information in this session. I hope I didn't go over it too quickly, especially walking through the steps of how to set up your paper. By the way, is there anybody here who walked through those steps with me? Anybody who opened up a Microsoft Word document and went through it in real time? Okay, Scott did. Oh, and Marcel did too. Okay, awesome. Because if you did it in real time, good news. You're set up. You can just start writing your essay. You won't have to worry about that again. And come the final project, which I'll talk about in next week's session, where you'll need to submit materials again in APA format, including a cover page and a references page, you can just use the same materials. Yeah, you might have to change the title of it, but you can still use the same format. Once you get it down, you got it down. So that's good news. Okay, any final questions? I know I went through a lot. I went through research, APA, the essay that's due on Sunday. I gave reminders to keep up with the McGraw-Hill stuff, because that's easy points. I think that's the gist of it. Okay, if you don't have any questions, you're free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll hang out here for a little bit and answer questions as they might come.